Hi, my name is Anirudh. I am a chef, which means I cook professionally. And no, it is not the same as cooking Maggie at home, but it is an extremely rewarding job. And if you were to pursue it, which we in the next 20-ish minutes will try and figure out if you're the sort of person who would go forward in life and want to become a chef. If you were to do it, it's a very satisfying job, and it is something that you would come home and be comfortable with. What is a chef, however, is a complicated question. The reason I keep saying this is because I do happen to, I meet a lot of new kids all the time. I am 26 now, so I've been doing it for a few years, but I meet kids all the time who sort of have looked at MasterChef and thought that's what it looks like. And no, it does not look like that. It is worlds apart. But just like any other job, if you put in the hard work, you will get a lot in return. Now, a little bit about me before we start. I grew up in Kota, in modern school. I spent a lot of my formative years, which obviously have, they've played a major role in the kind of person that I am today. But I moved from Kota when I was around 17-ish. I moved to Jaipur to learn more about Rajasthani cuisine, because I am Rajasthani. It helps a bit if you know your own stuff. After that, I moved to Delhi to learn bartending and to understand more about alcohol, how to learn it. Don't worry, I had crossed 18 by then and there was not a lot of tasting. It was purely technical. Then I moved to Hyderabad and I studied at the Culinary Academy of India for a fair bit of time, after which I moved to Bangalore. When I was in Hyderabad, however, I spent a lot of time working with some of the biggest hotel chains in India, which includes the ITC and Taj, Radisson, and several others, including Park Hyatt and the Hyatt Group. I then moved to Bangalore. I had a fair bit of experience with, for example, working during the IPL during that season. And so I moved to Bangalore after that, and I was at the ITC Gardenia, which was at that point in time the greenest hotel in Asia, which means that there was a very, very small amount of wastage. They were a very green hotel. Then after that, after I trained at the ITC Gardenia and at the JW Marriott in Bangalore for a little bit, I moved to Sydney to study at the Cordon Bleu, which is the oldest cooking school in the world. Not the one in Sydney where I studied at precisely, it was the one in Paris that started, but if you like fine cuisine or if you are interested, you would probably know what Le Cordon Bleu is. But I spent about 3 years over there studying a Grand Plum, and then I went on to study an advanced diploma in hospitality management. And so about 3.5 years over there studying the intricacies of both cuisine and pastry, during which time I worked during and after in multiple other places, of course, as well, including Bill's Bondi, which is an establishment that really has been credited with a lot of new ideas and fresh, innovative ideas that are now used in a lot of restaurants around the world, cafes, and a lot of other formats. After Bill's Bondi, I went to work in the pastry section at the International Convention Center, which is the single largest convention center in the Southern Hemisphere. It's a very big establishment. I learned a lot about, because I was moving from a la carte, which I was doing at Bondi. Quick point, a la carte means when you go to a restaurant and you order by the product. If you want an entree, sure. If you want a main, sure. If you want a dessert, sure. And you can mix and match and you can choose your own. That's an a la carte restaurant, and that's what I was doing in Bill's. And then I moved to the ICC, where I was doing a lot of VIP tables and a VVIP setup all throughout as well, and I was doing a lot of big numbers. So that was a very different experience, especially also because I was working with pastry at that point in time. After that, I went on to work at the Hyatt Regency in City, which is the single largest hotel in the Southern Hemisphere. Has over 900 rooms. Very nice place. I was working in Sailmaker and in other spaces as well, learning. And then from there on, which was the most recent thing that I've been doing, is the restaurant that is, it's a Sydney institution. It's been around for 23-ish years. Unfortunately, during the COVID crisis, as you can imagine, a lot of businesses are grappling with it. But otherwise, it's been over 20 years. They've had a very successful run. It's called the Boathouse on Blackwater Bay. Get a chance, look it up, look at what kind of food we're doing, or were doing at least. And you'll see that, you know, I've had a fair bit of experience with different formats, whether it's a la carte, buffets, or big numbers or small numbers, VIP tables where you're doing 5 people, fixed menus, obviously, a lot of fixed menus, degustation menus, that sort of stuff. But essentially, I just want to have a chat with you today about a few things. I'm not going to throw in a lot of numbers because I've decided that that's probably not the best direction to go in, because you can find the numbers. But maybe if I speak to you about my experiences, it might aid you in making a decision. Any which way, I'm probably going to put in a few numbers here and there because you need to understand the numbers are going to be a very, very major part of your life. So this is the number I want you to begin with. 16.1%. 16.1% is the growth rate at which chef's jobs over the next 5 years in Australia will boom. The reason I'm stating Australia is not just because I live in Australia, but also the fact that countries like Australia are going to drive this movement forward. Countries which are a little bit farther away, if you would like to move, but if you're in India, there's not a better time to do it. Unfortunately, the numbers, as you can imagine, in India and in Australia and overseas, they're not looking so good this year. That I don't want you to worry, because even though it's a difficult time to get into the market, it is always fun to learn more, because there will always be need for good, innovative cooks and chefs. And there is a massive difference between cooks and chefs. But I don't want you to get into any of it. Just ask yourself whether or not you actually like cooking, because you're going to cook a lot. And again, as I've said before, it's not going to be small amounts of things. It's not going to be anything like cooking at home. You're not going to have that sort of an experience. And the bottom line is this. It is so because it is a product. It's like selling anything else. It's a product. And you must sell the product. And you have to take difficult decisions sometimes. I still remember when I was working at a very famous restaurant, one day on my section, there were multiple things. There's different sections that I will get into, but there's multiple sections in a restaurant and everyone does their own thing, but with tandem with each other. It's a very synchronized movement. But there was an item on my part of the menu, and I walked in and it was taken off the menu, and I asked my chef, like, why'd you do it? And he gave me a very simple answer. He told me, he was like, I understand that you think, it's the pinnacle of art, which I did. It was a beautiful product, but regardless of that, it just wasn't selling well. And essentially, everyone had to ask themselves why it wasn't selling well. It wasn't selling well because there were other items on the menu that were cannibalizing into the market share. Everyone comes in and spends money on different items, right? That's a share. The complete market has divisions. What would you like to have? Buffets. There's a different sort of a restaurant for that, a la carte, different sort of restaurant, degustation menu for an anniversary, a birthday, a date, different sort of a restaurant. Everything has their own space. But even when you go into restaurants, everything on the menu is judged according to how much it can sell. If it's not selling, you're not going to be selling it. It's just as simple as that. But in any given situation, I want you to have a little bit of spine over here. And the spine will come from questions like, can you differentiate between a chef and a cook? And I want you to, because they're not the same and they're not interchangeable. A cook is very different to a chef. For example, I've been doing this for a few years and I'm still not according to what the laws of the government are. I'm classified as a chef according to that, but in the eyes of my chef, I'm a cook, and in my eyes, I'm a cook. It takes a lot of time to get to be called a chef. It's not an overnight process. But in any given situation, you need to understand that even though both of them work in close tandem, it's not the same at all. For example, the chef will have multiple other responsibilities, whether it is ordering, which is going to be a very major part, whether it is keeping the restaurant up and running, different places, different problems, different tools, different equipment, sometimes it falters, sometimes it becomes an issue. You need to be on it at all points in time, and that's essentially what the chef does, apart from also calling orders in certain kitchens. It depends on what kind of kitchen you are, there's small, there's big. I'll read you the hierarchy and I'll try and explain. Any which way. Cooks don't do that. Cooks don't come up with new menu ideas. Cooks don't come up with new stuff. I mean, sometimes it does. And if you have a very sort of motivated chef that is ready to go, then even if you're a cook and you come up with a good idea, your chef might actually expect it. I, for example, had a thing on the menu that my chef okayed because it was a good product. It was a very good product, and it sold because there was a fair bit of market research before we put it on. No, just like that, you can't just put stuff out there. You have to have experience, and there's a lot of people in the kitchen who have experience that sort of idea, whether or not a product will work, and everyone gets together and makes it happen. But a cook doesn't. A cook doesn't have a say. A cook essentially cooks what he's told to. That's why he's a cook. There's different sections, whether it's a grill section, whether it's some restaurants might have a rotisserie or a tandoor. There might be flat iron, flat plates, there's going to be ovens, there's going to be a lot of stuff on the menu, and I'll run you through it. But let's get back to the hierarchy. The topmost person in the kitchen is always going to be this individual called the chef de cuisine, or the head chef. He is the one calling the shots. He is going to make sure that everything runs properly. He's going to be doing the accounts. He's going to be doing the ordering in most cases. There's a lot of pressure on this individual to make sure that everything works properly. If you've ever watched concerto, for example, if you've ever watched synchronized musicians, that's essentially what it is. It's just not music, there's food coming out. Aiding the executive chef, the second in command, is this individual called the sous chef. In certain restaurants, in certain places, in certain hierarchies, you'll find that there's senior sous chefs and junior sous chefs, there's executive sous chefs, and there's different deviations. But essentially, it goes executive chef, second in command is the sous chef. Now, the sous chef is the individual who is running it, and there is a very crucial reason also why restaurants have sous chefs, and that is this. Say your restaurant does lunch and dinner, for example. The prep for lunch, if it opens up at 12 and goes on till 3, that's the service timing for the lunch, 12 to 3, it's not going to be opening at 12. The restaurant's going to be opening at 6 or 7 in the morning to get everything prepped and ready. I mean, of course, different ways and different ideas, but I can assure you it's going to be opening up very early. So if this individual comes in at 6 in the morning or 7 in the morning, this individual might want to go home by 4. That is why you need someone second in command who has the kind of experience, of course not the same, but similar experience in terms of running a kitchen, who can take care of the dinner shift, for example. In my restaurant, the sous chef used to come in and do the breakfast because the lunch was slower than the dinner was. The dinner was harder, more numbers, more packs. So the head chef would take care of the dinner. Of course, different places, different ideas, but sous chefs are also the one who essentially are in there. Sometimes head chefs won't be in there, in the kitchen with you. Depends, for example, in hotel chains in India, a lot of them, multiple restaurant, we call them F&B outlets, food and beverage outlets, but there might be multiple F&B outlets, but there's going to be one executive chef sitting at the top. And that individual isn't exactly going to be cooking at all. It's a very corporate-like job. And yes, there's things of that manner as well in the kitchen that have to be executed as well. That's very important. So each kitchen was run by a senior sous chef, and the second in charge would be a junior sous chef. So depending on where you are, the hierarchy is kind of malleable. Under the sous chef, you will find multiple other chefs. Depending on where, again, what restaurant does what, there's people going to be at different sections. For example, the pastry chef, for example, is called a pâtissier. A grilled chef, then there is a pantry chef. Some hotels in India call it the garde manger, where you have a lot of fresh products being processed. Then there could be roast chefs, vegetable chefs, which is the entremet. So if you ever get the opportunity and you get confused while touring a hotel, because sometimes that happens, always remember the garde manger and the entremet is very, very different. The entremet is a vegetable chef, processes vegetables, raw vegetables, processes it, for example, cuts it into dices. And I will run through different kinds of cuts. But essentially, he is the one that makes sure that everything is done in a format that is ready for whenever the different restaurants in the hotel needs it. The garde manger does fruits and cold cuts, for example, sometimes. There's a fish chef, and there's a sauce chef, and there could be a tandoor chef. It depends on what kind of restaurant you are. And under that, there will be the commis. Different places do it differently. There could be a CDP above all this. So it could be something as simple as executive chef or a head chef, sous chef, chef de partie, and commis. Or there could be commis 1, commis 2, commis 3. For example, the restaurant that I was working in, I'm still a commis because there is only one head chef, there is only one sous chef, there is only one CDP. And everyone else is a commis. Different restaurants, fine dining restaurants sometimes do that very often. So it depends. Anyway, now we need to discuss the salaries in India, for example. Now, a head chef in India, depending on how big the property is, could be a 40-seater restaurant, could be a bigger restaurant, could be 100 plus, could be a restaurant in a hotel, could be a buffet style restaurant in a hotel, could be a bar. There's also food going there. There's a big gap between the lowest paid and the highest paid. Okay, for example, the head chef salary goes from 2 lakhs at the lowest to 20 lakhs, and of course, you can always find places that might be lower or higher. But this is a general overview of what things are like. A sous chef would be paid from 2 to 12, depending on again what kind of a restaurant it is. A pastry chef could be somewhere between 1 lakh to 10 lakhs per annum. All these figures are per annum. So you need to start thinking about the money aspect of it as well if you want to spend money trying to learn the craft, because it will take time. Now, what is important, what is crucial to understand is that there's a wide major gap in the market, in the sense that there's food available in all spectrums. There could be a 10 rupee plate, a 100 rupee plate, a 1,000 rupee plate, a 10,000 rupee plate. They're all there in the market, and there are consumers at every level on the spectrum. So you need to concentrate, and you need to do a basic overlook of where you want to end up in, say, 5 years or 10 years. Now, essentially, I also want to touch up on, basically, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because this is information that you might get off the internet. I want to focus on what it feels like and what basic ethics are like, and how food gets to you and that sort of stuff. But essentially, this is what they call a chef kit. Basically, it has knives in it, and if you are going to be a chef, you're going to end up with a lot of knives. Obviously, there's different kinds of chef kits that come, smaller, bigger. You're probably going to spend the most amount of time with one of these. They call it chef knife, right? There's different variations of it depending on how long you want it. Different people sort of like doing and using different knives of different kinds. This is the Wursthof. You will come across something of this sort. This is a German knife. My knife kit is sort of dominated by European knives. There's a lot of people who like Japanese knives, and if you're into that sort of work, you might end up with a Japanese knife. They're unibody frames. They essentially have one piece of steel from the top to the bottom, and everything else has been clamped on. This is a Victorinox. This is essentially what they call a workhorse. It will never essentially, leave you in a bit of an issue, if that makes any sense. This is a paring knife. The chef knife is for basically whatever you get your hands on. This is a paring knife. You use it for finer tasks, something that you don't need the length for, and it's a bit of an issue if that's too much length. This is a fish knife. It's flexible, unlike other knives. It's meant to be able to move with the fishes. If, for example, you were taking the skin off or something, it's meant to move along with soft flesh. This is a pick. There's different kinds of it. It's essentially basically used for plating, for making sure the garnishes are in the right place. There's a lot of emphasis on it. This is a chef's tube. This is how you sharpen your knives. Sharp knives are extremely crucial. I cannot tell you just about enough. Also, obviously, you need to start thinking about the fact that, if you are in a kitchen, you might get hurt every now and then. It does happen, especially in the beginning. You might get cut, you might, sort of just get cut a little bit. It happens. Also, you need to sort of decide why you would like to do this, because it is going to take a lot from you. A chef's basic day is anywhere between 8 to 12 hours, just like any other job, except that you're also going to be spending a lot of time on your feet. If you're really interested in cuisine, it's a very good idea to do so, but you are going to be spending a lot of time indoors, and that is, depending on how you look at it, could be a pro or a con. There's a lot of people who would like to do something like that. For example, me, I absolutely love the idea, but there's going to be a lot of people who just don't. Secondly, you need to understand that there needs to be an idea regarding what your future is from it. Do you want to have a restaurant of your own? Do you want to work your way up to being, for example, a corporate chef? A corporate chef is a chef for a hotel group, for example, the ITC, that takes care of multiple F&B outlets in multiple hotels, and not personally overlook it, but that's the big dog over there, basically looking after all the F&B outlets from a strategic point of view. Or do you want to have a food truck? You could want a whiskey bar, you could want anything. And there's going to be people that you will need to approach in that format. There needs to be a very good understanding that there are things that might fly in other kitchens but will not here, and it's basically all connected to basic ethics about work that you might realize. Whether it is turning up on time, 10 o'clock means 10 o'clock, it does not mean 10:05, it does not mean 10:10, it does not mean 10 o'clock even, it means 5 minutes to 10, because you need to be in there getting ready to set up. A kitchen works very fast. Depending on where you are in the kitchen, you have certain tasks to get done. So whether you're focusing on the mise en place aspect, which is French for everything in place, essentially the idea that once you have your setup ready, then you can start going at it. Because, for example, an order comes in and you need basic raw material. The basic raw material is already processed and there, so when you need to cook it, it can go. You're not suddenly, for example, cooking an onion. This is what your initial years are going to look like unless you move up the line. And once you move up the line, then you will have other issues as well that you will have to look after. But primarily, I want you to start thinking about how much you like cooking. Because again, as I said, it's never think that it is the same as you cooking for 4 people at home, because it's not going to be 4 people. You're going to have to sell it to an extremely picky crowd sometimes. And that is a good thing because it pushes you in the right direction to make the right moves. The idea is very simple. you are going to be pushed into this kitchen that is going to be very hot. It's 50 degrees in there sometimes. I've seen temperatures higher than 50. You might sometimes get burnt a little or hurt a little, and that happens. But it will be there, and it will be fast moving, and you will have to keep pace. And sometimes the criticism that you receive might not be properly worded in a corporate format, but it gives you, if you're an artist and you would like to focus on creating art in multiple aspects, visual, taste-wise, this is probably the place for you, because there's no other art form in which you can achieve these things. It's either, for example, a visual medium. When you eat food, it's the taste, it's how it tastes in your mouth, it's the texture, it is the other elements of cooking, whether it's salt or whether it's fat or whether it's sweet. You will need to understand these things. You will need to understand what umami is, why it makes you salivate in the way that it does, why the sour things make you salivate in the way that they do. What are the ingredients looking like? What difference does an ingredient, for example, in India, feel to the same ingredient that's coming from, say, the US? It could all compile into, compound into a multi-layer challenge in terms of what you want your menu to look like. And obviously a cafe's menu is going to be looking very differently to a restaurant's menu. And a restaurant's would look very different to a buffet menu, and so on and so forth. It is all centered around the idea that the patron must have the absolute best time that this individual possibly can. It is, everything is built around what the patron wants. And no, of course, you will sometimes be saying no to the patrons as well. There are some requests that cannot be honored. But for the most time, you need to be setting an example out in the food world, whether it is related to sustainability. Obviously, as you guys study through the pandemic, you've realized that the world is about to change, and it is up to us whether it changes for the better or for the worse. And you will have to take into consideration the fact that everything that you eat has a price. If you're eating meat, there's an animal that obviously has lost its life. It's a personal decision that you make. If you're vegetarian, then you will have to decide other aspects. And whether or not you eat meat or vegetarian, please keep it out of the kitchen. If you have any personal preferences, diet preferences, it most definitely can be accommodated. But I've seen, unfortunately, people who turn up and who won't taste a gravy. That's not a meat versus non-meat option. It's just the fact that, it's too sweet or something. That, their taste buds won't align. And if you don't believe in your work, then it's just not going to be doable. But basically, you will have to concentrate on things such as food miles. For example, that is a personal agenda point of mine as well. When I work in the kitchen, I make sure that I reduce, for example, the restaurant that I was working at, we made sure that we were essentially only getting raw products from a 300-kilometer range. So local, absolutely local. You're not getting any products from France, we're not importing anything from Japan, we're not getting anything from overseas. We're reducing the food miles. We're helping the local economy, we're helping local businesses, farmers. You're making sure that you invest in them and they invest in you. Because you can always find great products. It doesn't matter where you're from, you can always find great products around. And so essentially you will have to work on multiple ends. Please don't come into the kitchen thinking that it's going to look like MasterChef. And I keep saying it repeatedly again and again, please don't turn up hoping that it will look like MasterChef, because it most definitely does not. It's going to be harder, it's going to be tougher, and for people who want to do it, it will make absolute sense to do it, because it is a growing market. There are more and more people willing to go out and eat, and you can pick your position in the market regarding what kind of food you want to create, what kind of cuisine you want to create, what are the kind of people that you want to cater to, etc., etc. And there's a lot of decisions in there. But the end question, the most important question that you need to ask yourself is, do I like cooking or not? Because at the end of the day, everything boils down to the fact that you must really like food to spend so much time in there. But I would also encourage everybody to make sure that there isn't just, because the chefs that are coming out now, the cooks that are coming out now, everybody does other things as well. There's other things that you have an idea. It builds a more rounded, well-built character. It's a more robust character when this individual has experiences in other ideas. Of course, your full-time job when it's cooking, that's what you're going to be doing. You're going to be reading those books. You're going to be making sure that you know everything about everything. And that obviously will matter. But if you have something that you do spend time, your relaxing leisure time doing, yes, it is always a pro. If you ever go looking for a job, you will realize that if you have a more well-rounded personality, that is what everything is going to boil down to. How well can you work in a team environment? And a lot of that comes from experiences in other areas. It could be anything. You could be an excellent debater, for example, or you could be an athlete. Any and every experience brings something new to the table, and you need to spend time making your character a well-rounded character. And if you do that, and if you like food, and if you genuinely want to cook, maybe give it a try. Look around. There's multiple colleges in India that do hotel management. There is multiple hotels that have their own management program. Oberoi does it, ITC does it. They absorb you into the stream for a few years and then they leave you at the end of it and you get to be a sous chef, a junior sous, or a senior sous. There's a lot of things that you can possibly do. But I want you to think ahead, because that is the most crucial point of it all. If you look ahead, have a plan, get ready, have good work ethics, and always are productive and motivated, because that's what anyone in any industry wants at the end of the day. Now, I hope this was helpful in some way. I've tried to not put in a lot of numbers, and I've tried to not put in a lot of information that you can go overseas, which is, genuinely what kind of cuts or what kind of knives. I don't want to do that because that is information that you can find online. I want you to try and understand this as someone's perspective who's been working in the industry for multiple years and take it from there. I wish you all the very best and good health.